Photojournalist Julio Cortez was on the Associated Press's breaking news team that was covering the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. It was not actually until January 8th, 2 days after the attack, that he was finally able to upload this footage I'm about to show you of a mob of Trump supporters attacking him and grabbing both him and his AP colleague, a man named John Minchillo, who's another Pulitzer Prize-winning AP photojournalist. Mr. Minchillo, at one point, they threw him off the railing of the front of the Capitol. The mob of Trump supporters did. So I'm going to show you about 45 seconds of this video shot by Mr. Cortez. If you have kids watching with you who you don't want to see real-world violence, this is me warning you that this is maybe you should be distracting or something for about 45 seconds or so, because we're going to show you that tape right now. It's AP photographer John Minchillo, who's the man you saw being menaced and thrown over the railing there. His colleague Julio Cortez, being attacked alongside him. He was the one who shot that footage. Those men are both Pulitzer Prize-winning AP photojournalists. Incredible, right? I mean, lucky to get away with their lives that day when the Trump supporters attacking the Capitol decided they would set upon them. And I mean, you can see that they're press. You can clearly see, Mr. Minchillo at least, right? You can see the long camera lenses hanging off of his gear. You can see his camera, you know, I mean, but they just try to tear him apart. Unless you think that was an isolated incident that day, or maybe they didn't really mean it. This, of course, happened on the same day, same place. This you might remember. They're saying CNN sucks, while they smash up all that audiovisual equipment, all that journalism equipment, cameras and lights and microphones and cabling. They're saying CNN sucks because that's the chant that Trump used to lead at his rallies. I don't think it mattered to the crowd that none of that equipment was CNN equipment. It was, I think, again, it was Associated Press equipment, but did they care? I mean, subtlety and precision was never really the point here. The point is something else, something much more obvious. And I have been thinking today about that explosion of violence by Trump supporters against the media on January 6th, against reporters and photojournalists on January 6th. I've been thinking about that today because of what we have just learned about this man. This is the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech from this past year. They awarded the Nobel Peace Prize this past year to a journalist from the Philippines and to this man, who you see on the right side of your screen here, who has been the editor, the leader for decades of a newspaper in Russia called Novaya Gazeta. Novaya Gazeta is an independent newspaper, and his life's work has been trying to keep the independent press in Russia alive by keeping Novaya Gazeta alive. And I say literally alive here, and I repeated that word because it's important to know how often the reporters who work at Novaya Gazeta have been murdered for their work. One of the most celebrated investigative journalists of modern Russia, Anna Politkovskaya, was a reporter for Novaya Gazeta. Much of what the world knows about the truth of Putin's wars in Chechnya, we know because of her intrepid investigative reporting about it. She published a book in 2004 called Putin's Russia, basically sounding the alarm for the West about what kind of man Putin was and what his plans were for his ability to use power in Russia and to use the Russian state. Anna Politkovskaya was murdered 2 years after she published that book. in the midst of her ongoing investigative reporting on the Russian government and Vladimir Putin's regime, she was murdered. She is one of 6 reporters for that one newspaper who were all murdered in Russia before Putin got to the end of his first decade in power. 6 different reporters from Novaya Gazeta, all killed in less than 10 years. But Novaya Gazeta kept going. And for the Nobel Peace Prize this year, the committee recognized its leader, its editor, Mr. Dmitry Muratov, for the noble and increasingly impossible work of keeping going, of just continuing to do journalism under the threat of this metastasizing, authoritarian, violent Putin government. Mr. Muratov dedicated the Nobel Peace Prize to his murdered reporters, his murdered employees, including Anna Politkovskaya. In his speech, this was in late December, he warned that Russia was preparing its own population for war, preparing its own population to hate Ukrainians and not see them as human. He warned that Russia was preparing to launch a war against Ukraine. This was him giving that speech December 10th, 2021 in Oslo. This was him 3 weeks ago, April 7th. He was on a train out of Moscow, and they attacked him with red paint mixed with acetone. It chemically burned his eyes. He survived, but he was hurt. Again, this is the current Nobel Peace Prize laureate. He has vowed to stay in Russia, even as the Russian government has finally succeeded in shutting down his paper and shutting down Novaya Gazeta and all other independent journalism in Russia. Putin, of course, has put in place this new law that puts you in prison for 15 years if you even report on or describe the war against Ukraine. And while Dmitry Muratov has decided he will stay in Russia despite that, and he's nearly died for it already, his Novaya Gazeta reporters and editors who have fled Russia, they